After a 3-0 victory in Game 1, the Florida Panthers take a series lead in the Stanley Cup Final over the Edmonton Oilers. Welcome to the panel, presented by Sportsnet. I'm pleased to be joined by two studs out here on the Fort Lauderdale beach, Bob Stauffer and Jack Michaels. Guys, it is toasty out here. Someone else who was on fire last night, if you will, it was Sergei Bobrovsky, Jack.
Well, I don't know whether he could have pulled up the Stauffer look from about, 9 years ago when he rolled up the dress pants and waded in for his first taste of the beach. At that time, in probably 20 years, I don't think he's been on the beach since. But I'll tell you what, Sergei Bobrovsky, it's amazing the metamorphosis he's had in the last basically 13 calendar months. This was a guy who was Florida's backup heading into the 2023 postseason. And quite frankly, I think Bob will back me up here, that $70 million contract largely considered a bust. I mean, he just hadn't done much for his first several years in South Florida. But starting with the last postseason, he has delivered every dollar back to Florida. And perhaps over-delivered, because last night, quite frankly, for the first 30 minutes, it wasn't close. The Oilers were the much better hockey club, and yet they were down 2-0. I will say this, in the last 30 minutes, Florida started to saw it off a little bit, and Edmonton did not get the same kind of chances it got in the first 30 minutes, because I'll tell you what, Paul Maurice kind of downplayed it a little bit in the aftermath of Game 1, but if Florida plays like that again in the first 30 minutes of Game 2, I don't see how Bobrovsky could duplicate his Game 1 performance, because it was one of the better showings for half a hockey game that Bob and I have seen in the 14 years we broadcast games together.
Yeah, there's no question. Bobrovsky played like a wall, and the Oilers maybe played a little bit into him, because they ended up in a situation where on the breakaways they went to the dekes a couple times, and it's difficult when you're in the game situation, but the word on Bobrovsky is to shoot high on him. He's got great lateral movement. He takes away the lower half of the net. And it would not surprise me if Edmonton makes an adjustment in that regard as the series goes on. I concur with Jack's thoughts. I think Edmonton was really good for about 32, 33 minutes in that game. And then Florida elevated their game and got back to doing what they do, which is a hard-pressed forecheck, and then they shrink the middle of the ice. The Oilers were killing them with speed through the first 32, 30 minutes of the game. And I think that to Florida's credit, they did a good job sort of negating Edmonton's transition opportunities as the game wore on.
Now, Leon Draisaitl said, we do believe that our team has better, and when we are at our best, we believe that we can beat anybody. So we know that in Game 2, it's hopefully going to be a bit of a different Edmonton Oilers team that shows up, even though they did play well, but they are also well aware that it's going to be a different Florida Panthers team as well. They're going to be bringing their best. What do you expect to see in Game 2 if both of those types of teams show up?
Well, you touched on it. I mean, Florida, if you're Edmonton, you can't imagine dominating them again like you did for 30 minutes. This is the Stanley Cup Final. The Panthers are here for a reason, too. They actually finished ahead of Edmonton in the regular season. Not by much, but they had 3 more wins than the Edmonton Oilers. So you're going to get a better game from Florida. I think the lack of the 6-day layoff will help Edmonton in this regard. Think about the Florida goals. 3-on-2 off the rush, a puck that was basically kind of half chipped in. I mean, Verhaeghe didn't get all he wanted on that feed from Barkov. And then the second was a product of quite frankly, outworking Edmonton and the Oilers making a poor read in the middle of the ice, kind of a chip and charge and a great play by Sam Bennett. That's how they scored their 2 goals. Edmonton got lots of chances, but maybe that 6-day layoff accounted for a bit of a lack of polish. I mean, Bob mentioned you'd like to shoot high. Well, when the Oilers did, they didn't hit the net. Ekholm and Bouchard missed a couple of good chances from the slot. Zach Hyman had Bobrovsky down and out, kind of flipped it over the net on his backhand. So I think Edmonton did make those adjustments, Bob, but I think you'd also agree with me. They've got to do a better job of having that finite touch and polish around the net and putting it upstairs on Sergei Bobrovsky.
Well, the one thing we've seen this year, Paige, is never to write off the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, think of the start to the year, and we all thought they were better than a 2-9-1 start. Yeah. The advanced metrics would suggest, certainly the 4 games coming out of the Heritage Classic, they had like 160 shots on goal and scored 7 times. Edmonton has shown resiliency all season long, and they've shown resiliency in the playoffs. They were down, 3-2 to Vancouver, and they were down 2-1 to the Dallas Stars.
And they lost home ice advantage to LA even. I mean, going to LA, you're 1-1.
So I know this. I know Edmonton's got more game to give, but I have a healthy amount of respect for Florida as well, and I expect the Panthers will bring a better game. I think the Oilers will bring a better game. And I also sort of would like to reiterate what Connor McDavid said after the game. Like, Edmonton kind of stole one against Dallas, and the hockey gods smiled upon the city that night, right? I mean, Stuart Skinner was fantastic, and the Oilers only got 10 shots on goal and scored 2 goals against a pretty good goalie. And last night, we were sitting there, and the shots were like 24-8 at one point in the game, and they're down 2-0, and they've been stopped on 3 breakaways with the 4th highest scoring team in the National Hockey League. Hockey has a degree of luck to it. Florida has a real good team that doesn't need luck, but Bobrovsky was locked in, and they had the bounces last night, just like Edmonton had the bounces in Game 6 against Dallas. These often have a way of balancing over the course of the series, and I expect we'll see that.
A lot of hockey still left to play in the Stanley Cup Final. We expect both the Oilers and the Panthers to bring it. You two always bring it on the panel, so thank you so much. I hope that you're both able to enjoy some beach time, whether, it is reenacted from Bob of, I'm not sure what you called it, Jack. What did you call it?
Well, from what, the lack of leakage on this guy? I mean, he doesn't sweat.
I'm sweating right now.
I don't detect any. Meanwhile, I look like Albert Brooks from Broadcast News, and for those of you watching, you got to dial it back 40 years. I just aged myself with that movie reference.
Well, this is the panel presented by Sportsnet. Thank you so much for being here. Can't wait for Game 2. Oilers, Panthers, Monday night.